Black Pill Gnostic, BGS IBMOR. How are you doing?
Doing good. Doing good. How about yourself?
I'm doing all right. As I was saying before we started rolling, I found out about you through Dr. T. Hassan Johnson, and I've been checking out your work.
Appreciate
the stuff you have on. Oh yeah, the stuff you have on both channels, and very interesting material, thought-provoking material. I don't know. Some would call it controversial.
Very, very controversial on a lot of different levels.
See, what's interesting to me about content like yours and others that are in the space called the manosphere, and in particular, the Black manosphere, which is quite a bit different than the sort of quote unquote, as O'Shea Duke Jackson calls it, the white manosphere.
Yeah, it is different.
Quite a bit different. What's interesting to me is that much of what is being said is what we used to call common sense.
Right.
And I frequently have to remind myself and others that there's a difference between common sense and good sense.
Right.
It used to be that common sense was good sense. Now it seems that common sense is just foolishness. It's more than just a little bit aggravating and bothersome. If I meditate on it too long, I can get pretty dark. So your latest video on I think this was on I think your Black Pill Gnostic channel,
right?
So what's up with this Asian fat shaming? What's up with this?
Oh, it really wasn't about Asian fat shaming. What I wanted to show is the differences in, say, Black culture, what we call fat or thick, versus another culture. And I say it is cultural. And in the Black community, they want you, shout out to Kevin Samuels. He does this on a regular basis. Black women think that being 5'4" and 220 pounds is normal. Okay, it's not fat. Okay, it's not big. It's what we call thick, but it's within the realm of being normal, and you're not fat. Whereas if the video I did showing, I think 3 or 4 K-pop Korean women, and they were actually listed as fat or overweight, and those women, if you looked at them, wouldn't even be considered a decent IG model if they were Black. They weren't thick enough. They didn't have a big enough butt. They didn't have enough thighs. They didn't have enough hips. They're actually rather small, on the smallish side. So I was just saying, because a lot of Black women say that their size is normal, or what they think is a healthy weight is normal. Like forever, my daughter's like 5'3", and she weighs. And she had a baby, and she got up to like 180 pounds. And I was telling her she needed to be at 5'3", she needs to be like 125, 130 pounds. And her mother's telling her that's too small. And that's the way it is in our culture. In fact, I was just saying that Black men have such really no standard. Okay, well, individually we have standards, but as a group we don't have any standards, because even before that, I showed a couple of videos of Black men defending 300-pound women and saying that they were normal. And why are you shaming a 300-pound woman that's 5'7"?
Yeah,
we get a lot of that.
So on the one side, you have all of this talk about food deserts in urban centers, and when you actually analyze the research, if there are food deserts, then they're likely in rural areas, not necessarily in urban centers. I interviewed Roxy Beckles, and we had a conversation about that. So on the one hand, you're claiming that the food is what's making you overweight and obese. And who's the lady, short hair, big lady that she's on a talk show. She's claiming that the diets don't work the same, for black women as they work for white women.
Well, I can't remember her name. I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
but that whole clip, and that kind of went viral and it's all over the place. Seems like it's become a meme now. And so on the one hand, you have that kind of talk, but then on the other hand, you have the sort of excusing it and treating it like it's some sort of normal thing. So, which is it? Is it that the system is designed to make us, obese and overweight, and that's a negative thing? Or is it that, hey, we just big boned, we're just different than other folks? Which is it?
Yeah, well, yeah, those are the excuses that are given. But the thing is if you listen to women and how they talk to each other, it's not really a male standard, it's a female standard. And women, I've heard black women shame each other about being too small. Never about being too thin, but always being too small. So if they're...
I frequently hear, I frequently hear, over here, be in a family setting or, in some social setting or something, someone just lost a lot of weight, and, there's kind of murmurings, oh, she just looks unhealthy.
Yeah,
she looks
unhealthy.
And the thing is like, but what about what she looked like before? I mean, that's when she was unhealthy. Nobody said anything at that point. But when the person actually loses weight and gets down to where they actually should have been all along, now they're unhealthy. Yeah, it's
it's cultural, which to other cultures it makes no sense. Especially that's why I put the Asian culture, because if you looked at the video, those women are rather small, on the smaller size. They're not the big booty models that you see in rap, hip hop, IG, Instagram, or even OnlyFans. I mean, they'd be lousy OnlyFans models. Nobody would pay for them. Not in the black community. In fact, I had guys in my section saying that they're way too small. They're not fat at all.
Now, speaking of IG, I was listening to the news earlier, and so they're talking about this study that is showing that Instagram is contributing to a sort of insecurity about girls and the way that they see themselves, and being more dissatisfied with the way that they look and this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And they see this as being a problem. I mean, come on, really?
Yeah. It's a chicken and egg problem, right? And I think me and Ron Wills, we've been talking about this over the last say 6 years, maybe 7, about imprint. Okay. Psychological imprint, especially of young boys. Okay, they grew up with the Instagram or Twitter or these kind of women that are with the surgeries, with the even with the rap and hip hop, right? With the big fake boobs and the wide hips and the big round butt, the exaggerated big round butt, and the what they call the theatrical makeup that they put on. And when you put that in front of young boys, from pubescent on, okay, that imprints them. Those are the kind of women that they desire. And so those are the kind of women that get with fame and money and attention. And as my spiritual teacher used to say, attention is food. And especially to young girls and women, attention is food. So they're going to do whatever they can to get the same kind of attention.
Thank you so much for watching my video so far. If you'd like to support, there are several ways to do so below. Also, likes are free. Please comment, share, and subscribe. Now back to the video.
Food. So they're going to do whatever they can to get the same kind of attention that the boys are imprinted on, because if they can match the imprint, that's a gateway to get the boys resources, attention, affection, and all the other kind of stuff. So that's really, so it's not really that they look in the mirror and they're ashamed of what they have. The thing is, they know they can't compete to get the same kind of attention that the Instagram model is.
Yeah.
So it's a chicken and the egg, and because I have a lot of my like 95% men or something like that, 92% male followers, and I'm constantly asking them, okay, what do you like? What kind of woman do you like? What do you think is cute? And it keeps over and over again. It comes back to that Instagram type model, with the big bodacious boobs and the hips and stuff like that. Even you can see even with the with the I call them 100 octane, with the ballers, with the famous people, with the athletes, with the singers and blue check mark people. You can see them. Though that's the kind of women that they go for. So the women are actually going to gravitate to that kind of look. And I have another friend that he actually works for an airline, where he works for Delta in Atlanta. And he sees these people coming through with these surgeries. Like the biggest thing is going to the DR, getting Brazilian butt lifts, getting these exaggerated surgeries.
Yeah, I did a show on Thunder's Thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, what was it? It was called Fake Up,
mm-hmm.
on prioritizing superficiality
mm-hmm.
over substance.
Yeah.
And we did there was a couple video reviews. What's the name of that female singer? Her last name's Wu. She's got a bunch of followers on YouTube. I can't think of her
mm-hmm.
first name right now, but anyhow, she was as she's singing some gospel song talking about how Jesus paid it all.
Mm-hmm.
Then she goes into the boob job that she got.
Mm-hmm.
And what I was trying to show there is that this seems to be a not just it doesn't seem to just be a secular problem. Let's put it that way.
No.
It seems like it's totally infiltrated every aspect of Black culture.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, in fact, another fellow YouTuber, we call him Cousin Tita, but he actually goes by the name of Scorpio. He calls it the Kim Kardashian motif. So it's not just Black women. It's all women are actually adopting this. Black women actually a little bit more exaggerated than white women. But the thing is, this is the motif. This is the dime scale now. If you don't have the butt, you don't have the hips, you don't have the little bitty waist, you don't have the boobs, then you're not close to perfection.
And another video that we looked at was
mm-hmm.
this woman that had she had a BBL.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to see some really kind of sad kind of commentary about where we are,
mm-hmm.
just look for BBL journey. And it's not one video that I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
That's become like a genre of videos where it's like, the plastic surgery journey, the BBL journey, and there's just, hundreds, thousands of these videos, and they all kind of start the same way. I just wanted, to let folks know what this is going to be like, in case you want to do it, or, I just wanted to kind of demystify this, and, it was a hard decision, and, they all kind of start the same way. And this particular woman, she, the first one was, didn't work right. So then she had to get it fixed by going and getting another one. And, these things are expensive. So you got to save all this money to go get this procedure done. And it almost seems to me like, why not invest in, and maybe this will sound harsh, in a gym membership, in a trainer, a personal trainer, because it seems like what's happening is women are having to get this done multiple times because they don't change their eating habits or their lifestyle, and then they end up having to go get it done again. And at some point, this is going to become dangerous.
Yeah, it's all about a shortcut.
Yeah.
That's the instantaneous life that we live. Since the iPhone has changed the way we date, changed the way we look, changed the way we see ourselves, because it's connected to these apps, Instagram, Twitter, the dating apps, all this kind of stuff. It's really radically changed the way that we see ourselves, changed the whole culture.
Yeah, I cashed out just in time, it seems. I've been married for 13 years, and during that 13 years since I've been married, the world turned upside down with respect to the dating market, how social media, these apps, the dating apps and things, how that totally changed everything.
Right.
It's a completely different ballgame. And, my parents, they're still married. They're celebrating 51, 52 years or something. And when it came to us having a conversation, my dad having a conversation with me about, what the dating market was going to be like and sort of things, that pitfalls to watch out for. Even when I was dating, he was not going to be able to tell me anything that was going to really relate to, modern dating as it was back then. Let alone what's going on now.
What is going on now? Yeah, it's
part of my interest in what's going on in the dating market. Frankly, almost all of it is I have an 8-year-old son.
Oh yeah.
It just, oh my goodness, like what this thing is going to be so horrible by the time he's ready to start dating. And it's like, oh my goodness,
if they still date by then,
right?
because I was as a side, I was actually on a stream with what I call our weekly geek stream, our weekly Coliseum, and there was a guy, he calls himself Seattle Sideshow. He's actually in Seattle, and he was talking about his dating pattern. Okay, and the group dating pattern amongst the mid-20 folks up in Seattle. And so I asked him, what was your longest relationship? And he said it was a year, but it was when he was in college, when he was 19. I said, okay, outside of that, what's your longest relationship? He said a month. So I asked him, well, how do you guys meet? How do you guys get together? He said, oh, do you still date? He said, sort of. In other words, they still hook up. And what happens is that the way he described it, they have a pool of women, they have a pool of men, and what they do is they go pick one inside the pool. They'll date for 2 or 3 weeks. They'll break up, and then they'll go back into the pool again, and then start the process all over. So out of a year, they probably will never date the same woman twice in a matter of a year and a half. They'll just keep going, picking another partner, hooking up, and then going back into the pool.
Ugh.
So they never form a bond. And I was hearing, I said, how do you guys form a bond if you're only with, you have sex with her 3 or 4 times and you toss her back? I said, how do you form a bond? He said they don't. How does she form a bond? They don't. This is just the way they operate. So this is probably the way it's where it's headed.
You know, at some point, it's like the folks that are most responsible for how messed up everything is, how everything's been socially re-engineered. At some point, those cats need to pay for this. They need to acknowledge it or something. Of course, we know that's never going to happen. But it's like, you know, and I say this frequently. For us traditionalists, you know, as a traditionalist, maybe speaking to someone that maybe ain't so traditional, at least you have to admit that if you had done it the way that the book says to do it,
right,
at least you have to admit, at least, that it would be a lot better than what it is now.
Yeah.
And what's going on now.
Yeah, it would be. It would be. But unfortunately, you know, then that's the whole thing about, you know, what I think they call it was Poststructuralists. I think that's the name, that term that Dr. Green Gorilla does use and Dr. Johnson used, Poststructuralists, where there is no structure. It's just the way you taught, and people perform roles. And that's the whole nature versus nurture. And in this, you know, in this modern society, we believe that nurture is way more important than nature, and it's not. And then when you change an environment, you change the way people operate. And it's not just the physical environment that's part of it, but also the social environment. Because I was wondering and said, when did all this stuff really change? Like the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule. I said, where does all that come from? So everybody asking, okay, they always go to their smartphone as proof, as statistics. And I said, you know, so I said, have you ever gone outside of this environment, ever gone outside of the smartphone to see how actually does this play out? Can you actually meet a girl that's not on a smartphone or not a dating app? They never consider it. Never consider it. What the phone says is what the phone says.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like, you know, with all of the Matrix references with the red pill and the blue pill and everything, I don't know. It seems like we're digressing into the Matrix somehow. Like, oh my goodness, this stuff is. I don't know. You laugh so you don't cry, right?
Right.
So. Okay, so you didn't always talk like this. You didn't always have these ideas. You weren't always this perceptive about how things have changed. What event or what series of events started to make you more aware of what's going on, and then feel impassioned enough to be willing to speak about it the way that you do?
Okay, well, it's never one thing. Okay, the first thing there's always one event where you go back and to make you aware. And I was in a ROTC class at USC, and basically I think it was Robert McNamara, who used to be President Kennedy's Secretary of State, and he came and he gave a speech, and he told us that, you know, this is in 1977. He said, you know, within 10 years the Soviet Union is probably going to collapse. Okay. And he gave us the reasons why it was going to collapse. And so I watched that, and I noticed that there's things that are going on behind the scenes that we're not aware of. And if you look and you keep looking at it closely enough, you can kind of find a thread and kind of figure out where things are going. So that was the first thing that actually made me aware that there's things that are going on that people know that we don't know, behind the scenes that will affect our lives. And sure enough, he was off by 2 years. It was 80 instead of 1987, it was 1989. And then the Gulf War, and then having children. And then the biggest thing is that two things happened back to back. I don't know if you ever heard of him. I started following an analyst, a geopolitical analyst called Craig Hewlett.
No, I'm not familiar.
Okay. He's been on talk shows. He's been on TV. He used to be a regular on Coast to Coast AM. So he's been around. And then the second thing, I became a Gnostic, the next year. Like in 94, as far as I started following him. And the next year I started, I found my Black Gnostic teacher. And then that's when I started to actually, notice more things, started observing people a lot more closely. And between the two of those, and then I think it was 2003, I actually, a friend of mine, he actually started an internet radio program in 2003. And he was talking about the normal thing about Black consciousness and Black history and stuff like that. And I said, hey, there's stuff that's going on in the world that Black people probably need to know about, which is how the world is shifting, geopolitically, right? Africa, the United States, China, the whole world. I said, maybe we should talk about that more, because what we talk about now affects us in the past, and that's important. But the thing is, what Black people don't talk about is the tea leaves about what's going to happen to their environment in the future, and that's where it started. That's literally where it started. Where I started speaking about it in public.
Now, for the folks listening, describe what Gnostic is. Like what is meant by that? Okay,
Gnosticism as a whole, is basic. All it is basic esoteric religion. It could be Sunni Muslim, it could be Jewish Kabbalist, it could be Masonry, which is Protestant Kabbalism. It could be Taoism, Shintoism, but any high-level esoteric religion is called Gnosticism. And me being a Black Gnostic, we center on basically all the faiths, but basically our grounding is men-fight theology. It's probably about 20,000 years old. And that's our grounding. That's where we start. We start with the Ptah, the Nun, and Atum, and then we work our way up, because the patterns are still the same. The patterns are always the same. There's, as far as religions, they all share the same core. Because if I look at yin and yang in China, Japan, and Asia, and I look at another symbol in West Africa, you can actually see the similarities between the two. They all share a common core. A pyramid, and there's pyramids under China, there's pyramids in Latin America, there's even pyramids in America. So what we found out is that people don't, if they move, if they spread out, they don't leave their religion where where they were. They carry it with them. So if you understand the underlying principles of any religion, or underlying principles of Gnosticism, you can look and peek in and see exactly where what that particular religion is actually built on. So to a Gnostic, all religions are basically the same, with some cultural differences. That's the way we look at it. That's a Gnostic, a knower.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so I have a playlist, and now folks have to be members of the channel to watch most of them. One of them they can see, anybody can see, but the playlist is called Blue Pill Testimonials.
Okay.
And it's a bunch of they're basically simp tales.
Okay.
I'm telling about how I was, making bad decisions, and the two things it seems to me that tend to that have the greatest potential to derail a man's life are, you know, money and women.
And women, yes.
And for me, it's been primarily women that have been the issue. So there's some stories there. So I'm saying this to, is there any blue pill moments that you'd like to fess up to?
Yeah, well, yeah. Well, that I had. Well, I never married the mother of my child, and probably she wasn't really wife material. But I had 2 kids by her. So, and both because of one, I got her pregnant. I was trying to make it work, and then while in the midst of trying to make it work, it had a second child, and then you figure out that, okay, she's not meant to be your wife. And what you've been taught, you know, what you've been taught is about how to actually pick a wife, how to treat a wife, how to operate as a man, is something that has been embedded in you, has been socialized in you. And sometimes that stuff is not true. When it works, it's fine. Like I always say there's 80% of the world is blue pill. Okay, you have to have a socialized standard for people to operate in. So there's nothing wrong with the blue pill world when it works. And most people don't find a red pill until it doesn't work, when it goes off the rails.
Right. Right. There's no reason to question.
There's a reason to question.
Everything is right. So you got the what is it, the rose-colored spectacles on? Everything has a good look to it. Yeah.
So yeah, that's what that, amongst others, but yeah, that's probably my major one. And then trying to make it work after that.
Well, you know, and the one of the things that this community, the community I'm talking about the manosphere, the men's space, the red pill space, whatever you want to say. It's not a monolithic space. There's all kinds of stuff going on in the space. And frankly, some stuff that I don't condone, but for the most part, I see it as a positive because it gives men an opportunity to talk to other men that have had, you know, bad experiences. And even if it's just to say, hey man, look, I got egg on my face too. And you know, and this is how much I was simping, you know, doing this, you know, even if it's just to share those things so that men don't feel like they're alone. It seems to me that for the most part, folks don't really care about how men feel about the stuff that we face with regularity. About the level of stress that we're constantly under, and about the fact that there is a burden of performance and there is no glass floor for us, you know, only a glass ceiling. And it tells you why the homeless folks in the world are, well, in the world also, but in this country, are dominated by men.
Yes.
You know, and just to have a space to be able to have those conversations. One thing that bothers me is that somehow it's considered some sort of an illegitimate enterprise for men to get together to talk to other men however they want to talk, in whatever terms that they want to use, about whatever they want to talk about. Why is that a problem?
Well, the thing is that the reason that you can build a society or build a country, build a society, a village even, right, is because the basic structure, the basic foundation is actually built on men's bodies. If men don't cooperate or participate in a certain way, then the structure never gets built. It'll fall apart. And if you want monogamous marriage, you want that kind of society, then you're going to have to get men to buy into it and be socialized and buy into that structure. And if they don't, then everything's going to go haywire, because men don't have to participate. Men don't have a biological urge to have kids. They have a biological urge to have sex, but not to have children. Okay, women do. And if you want a functional, stable society, you're going to have to get the men to buy in. Because the women cannot build it themselves, okay? They're not built for it, they're not socialized for it. Biologically, that's not their role. So men actually build a society. Their bodies actually form the structure of society. So men have to be convinced to sacrifice for a woman, for kids, for a family, for the neighborhood, for the country. Okay, they have to be convinced to sacrifice. And if you can't convince them to sacrifice, then it's going to fall apart. So whatever narrative whatever narrative the Matrix has running, okay, what they don't want is the counter narrative. And what the manosphere or the red pill space is a counter narrative. And that can be dangerous depending on what it is, because either one or two things. Either they're going to have to, if enough men actually buy into it or actually hear it and start operating that way, they're going to have to adjust. They're going to have to adjust. They're going to have to change the way the Matrix is actually built. And that's sometimes that's a lot of money. Sometimes that's a lot of hassle. And sometimes that's a lot of socialization that they have to redo. And so that's something they don't like it, because it is a counter narrative. Any counter narrative that's true, that can be proven, is a problem. What it says, all it takes is one candle to ward away the darkness. Doesn't take 1,000. All it takes is one. And so what if you have one candle and everybody starts lighting candles? Okay, that's gonna cause a shift in the way that men operate. When men start operating differently, the whole society has to shift with them. So that's where the problem comes in.
I was talking to my wife about, some of this, and she sees that, there's a lot of women that are talking negatively about men, and then there's a lot of men that are talking negatively about women, and how is that going to fix anything? And really what we need sort of to have conversations and forums where folks that are actually willing to have the conversation without, throwing a nuclear bomb in the middle of the room, metaphorically speaking, without, blowing the conversation up, I would like to see more of that happening. And I'm not ruling that out as a possibility. And part of what it is that I'm trying to do with my platform is to bring all kinds of different people together. And so in my mind, I see that the university has totally failed at its mission. The university's original mission, you can see in the word university. Unity in diversity. That's what university is. And the idea here was, of the four essences, earth, air, fire, and water, the discovery, the research, the study to find the fifth essence, the quintessence, the things that brings those four together. What is in common? And that's really the mission of the university. Yeah, but
supposedly.
It's supposed to be. But what ends up happening is you get under this big umbrella, but then everything becomes super siloed. And everyone's off to their own thing. And in order to get academics of different disciplines to collaborate, you have to do these special initiatives, interdisciplinary, like this. And think of how redundant that is. Interdisciplinary. It's a university. That's what it's supposed to be.
Right.
And with my dissatisfaction with that and frustration, you know, dealing with that, being an academic myself. What I'm trying to do with my platform is to try to bring all kinds of folks that have totally different kinds of views, and to have conversations like this one where we're talking and exchanging information, and I may or may not agree, you know, and that's okay. And they may or may not agree, and that's okay too. But you know, I'm trying to create a community of folks, different kind of folks, to be willing to have some of these kind of conversations. So I'm hoping, I'm praying that we can have men of a certain type and women of a certain type to get together and to be able to hash some of this stuff out and have real conversations. And maybe some folks take some responsibility for their part in it and move forward. But if I'm honest, it just seems to me like it's too far gone. In your thoughts, now this is a big question, and you can go anywhere you'd like to with it. In our community, the Black community, what do you see as the primary issues?
Okay, there's the basic fundamental primary issue is that you talk about the American Black community, right? The ADOS community, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
ADOS, yeah.
Okay, and this is the fundamental issue is that you have thousands of different disparate groups that were under the Black umbrella thrown together from different cultures and then bred to serve a purpose. So the culture that gave you is a slave culture, which is something the Moynihan report actually talked about. First thing he said, the culture, basically what Black people have is a incomplete or broken culture. It was designed to serve a purpose of capitalism, basically to be machines, to be a little bit more than farm animals. That's something they call it chattel slavery. You're a little bit more than cattle. So you take a disparate group, you actually breed them and give them a breeding pattern, a breeding culture, and you actually because of that, because of maternal instinct, they set the woman ahead of the family. In other words, the women actually are head of the family in the Black culture. The Black culture is a matriarchy. I call it a Gynocracy, which is ruled by women. And the thing is, it functions opposite to everybody else's culture. And so when it was internal, you could actually hold it together, even though it's dysfunctional. We can go back and read E. Franklin Frazier's book, the Negro Family in the United States, which is what the Moynihan Report was actually named after. Which now everyone see people talk about the Moynihan Report, they never talk about Frazier's book. They always skip over it. Okay, basically Frazier's book is what the majority of what the Moynihan Report was actually drawn upon. And Frazier talks about the dysfunction going back in the slave culture. And if you actually investigate it, because I actually did, it's called the American Slave Coast, about why Thomas Jefferson in Virginia and South Carolina started this breeding program after cutting off the external slave trade, is because they wanted to breed slaves. They didn't want people coming in that knew freedom, because it caused problems. And plus they got less for their slaves. So you started this internal breeding culture where 91% of us actually come from. And then when you release these people, you never allow them to actually fix their culture, become a more cohesive, organic culture. So what we have is an artificial culture that's been pieced up and clung onto. And then in the 1960s, since they wanted to integrate us, they tried to slowly but surely change their culture and actually make it a patriarchy, or what closer to a patriarchy, or closer to a nuclear family, which it wasn't before. And that didn't work. One, because the liberals and the feminists and the black women didn't want it changed. So even 50 years, 60 years later, you still have the same thing. And that's the fundamental problem. That is the fundamental problem, is that the cultural defects that is in the ADOS community, in the ADOS culture, subculture, never got fixed. And then you would pour racism on top of that, it just makes it worse. So we're living in a modern culture that needs to be functional. Under slavery, under Jim Crow, it's functional because that's what it's designed for. Outside of that, you can see the dysfunction. And basically, Moynihan saw it early, because if you look up the Moynihan scissors, right, that's why he wanted to have wrote the Moynihan report, because his job was to integrate these black people coming out, because basically machines were taking over agriculture, and there's no place for black people on the farm anymore, okay, where they were. So you have to integrate them into the cities, into the urban areas, and make them functional and fit in with everybody else. And so that was his job. That was his job, tasked by not only Kennedy, but also Johnson. And what he tried to do was actually train black men to get jobs just like white men. And what he noticed is that what the Moynihan scissors is that every other culture, when the men got jobs and the men started making money, welfare went down, okay? Except for who? The black culture. The men got jobs, they earned more money, and basically welfare started increasing, and he couldn't figure it out. That's how come they had the Moynihan report. What he found out is that, black culture, ADOS culture, runs backward or counterculture to white culture. And then when you mix in feminism, all that kind of stuff, intersexual feminism, all that kind of, you just make it even worse. So, but the thing is that you have a culture that's never been fixed, is what he said, right? And his job, Johnson's job, civil rights, was to actually start repairing that culture. The culture's never been repaired. And you keep dashing things on top of it, and so what you have now is a completely dysfunctional culture where black men and women can't even talk to each other anymore.
Yeah,
I mean, I know this is a lot, and people might not believe it.
No, I asked you a big question. That was a pretty that was a well thought out, definitive, answer. This divide between black men and black women. Oh man,
they were never together. That's the problem. They were never together. They were never together. She was not. They didn't bring black women over here to be your spouse. They bring black women over here to breed for the slave master. That's what they brought her over, to serve the white woman and to breed for the slave master. Okay, and that never got fixed. And you go on the continent. Okay, you have matriarchies on the continent, but the thing is, there's rules. There's male rules that actually govern that. Okay, there's no rules over here to govern what we do.
Tommy Curry's book,
Man Not, yeah.
The Man Not. And actually, I think I was on one of Dr. T. Hassan Johnson's streams, and you were on there. And you suggested that was for anyone that's in the, in the black manosphere, it's a must read book. Yeah. And I'm about 2/3 through the book. But there's a chapter where he talks about, okay, one thing that it seems that white feminists try to distance themselves from is their role in the patriarchy.
Right, they do.
White women's role in the patriarchy. So on the plantation, the slave plantation, yeah, the master, the CEO, yeah, that was he was the man. But the COO,
right,
the COO was the white woman. And often was the case that she was deciding who was going to get bread to who, and what the punishments were going to be for certain behaviors. And there's this sort of distancing from that and behaving in a way that white women never participated in this patriarchy that they constantly rail against. And in a very real way, and that's a very concrete example of that, we know that that's not true. What do you think of that?
The patriarchy, and it gets kind of, when feminists use it, it gets kind of blurred. The old-fashioned patriarchy that China still has, that Korea still has, that Greece still has, is not the same kind of watered down patriarchy that we have. In fact, the patriarchy actually, capitalism started watering down the patriarchy back in the late 18th century, when they took the women and children out of the home and put them in the factory and put the state in charge of the women and children. And that's where the tender years doctrine came in, the first one, where the child belonged to the woman up to age 7, and then they changed it to the child belonged to the woman till age 16. Whereas under old-fashioned patriarchy, the children belong to the father. That kind of cuts down a lot of the women leaving, cuts down a lot of the trouble about marriages breaking up, that kind of stuff, because woman leaves, she leaves with nothing. She doesn't own the property, she doesn't own the children. So if she wants to go, she can go. But on the other hand, that's why the men paid for her, the dowry. And if he did something wrong, he tossed her out. He had to pay her, alimony. That's where alimony comes from. In other words, you used her womb, you used her for her youth and beauty, you had children, and if you're going to kick her out, you got to pay her. That's where alimony comes from. But that has been watered down. And what we're participating in is a loose patriarchy. And when white women have a stake in it, they have a stake in what's happening because it benefits them. Even under the old patriarchy, the more her man earned, the better off her man was, the better off she was. And white women do. They still do. Even though it's not nearly what it was, and we know that it's not nearly what it was, but the thing is, what white women want to do is not get rid of the patriarchy, they actually want to take it over. Oh,
right. And while simultaneously benefiting from affirmative action, being the primary beneficiary.
Yes, that is a long story. In fact, you can go back to President Johnson's executive order, because the executive branch is in charge of facilitating affirmative action. We call equal opportunity back then. But he actually, women had no role in equal opportunity affirmative action. Okay, that was specifically for minorities, especially black men. Okay, right. And President Johnson, I think I can't remember the number of the executive order, actually included sex. One word allowed white women to come in and get affirmative action and get those jobs and get the stuff and actually be able to get, I think saw a figure of 83% of affirmative action jobs and monies go to white women, when it was actually through the Kerner Commission, actually designed for black men. That's what the Kerner Commission was about. But yeah, that's a rabbit hole.
Talk about a massive smack in the face, man.
Yeah.
And then, with their intersectional thing.
Oh, yes.
And institutions getting double credit for black women.
Yeah.
What that has done in the academy, it has incentivized the academy to further marginalize black men. And I know you're aware of this. I might have even heard you say this, but this stat about how there are 20,000 fewer black men in the academy than black females.
Right, and it's always been
20,000 fewer.
Oh yeah, it's always been that way, and that's one reason that the black female academicians hate the Monahan report. It's always been that way, because I was reading an article from I forget who she was. She was a professor, and she went to HBCU back in the in the 50s. And she's railing against the Monahan report. And she said back then, 3/4 of the people that attended her university were female back then. In fact, if you actually read the mind, most people don't even read it. They look at the cliff notes. You actually read the Mining Report. He actually talks about 75% of the valedictorians of black high schools were female back then. Black women have always been more educated than men. In fact, before the Kerner Commission, only 23% of black men ever graduated high school.
You know, the thing is like, you know, oh goodness. So part of my frustration is that, okay, now I agree with the sentiment, the sort of slogan Black Lives Matters, but there are several things about the mission of the political arm of that that I don't, including the further sort of destruction of the nuclear family and a number of other things that would be even worse for us than it already is. But at least that thing sort of kind of got going with, you know, with black men being sort of having bad experiences with the police and whatnot, right? Mass incarceration of black men and all of this, right? But what has happened is all of the sort of aiming towards improving situations for the groups that were being persecuted that started the movement.
Right.
What did we get from that? We still have nothing. It's like they keep leapfrogging over us to some other.
Oh, they're not leapfrogging over you. They're using you as a stepping stool. They're not leapfrogging. They're stepping on you on the way to a higher level. They're not jumping over your back. No, they're stepping on you as a step stool to elevate themselves to a higher level. So I'm sorry, sir. I hate to disagree with you, but yeah, no, you're a fundamental part of their elevation. Okay. The black woman's foot is squarely on your back as she elevates herself to a higher level.
Oh my goodness. That is, and you know, in this conversation, in this sort of forum that I was mentioning earlier, having people of a certain persuasion on both sides to have some conversations and folks owning up to their part in the problem.
That's a rough one.
Yeah. And that's part of the, and honestly, that I think that ends up being the death knell to that, because if you can't even do that, I mean, I don't know what else, you know, what are we here to talk about? Because, you know, if you're not going to acknowledge that there's something wrong there, how do I know you're not going to, you know,
black women, black, you know, I'm sure you can't say it. You know, I've heard it, and this is just my opinion. Has nothing to do with Dr. Thunder, okay, or what he believes, because I don't know what he believes, okay. So I'm gonna put that disclaimer out there. This is slowly Eli's opinion, right? My observation, right, is that the women in the academy do not want to give up power. They like their position, and they really don't want to share power with black men. Okay, they don't. They like to use racism and black men's plight to elevate themselves, to bring in money, to bring in more power, more position, more jobs. But as far as doing something for black men, even the black boys in their own institutions, they give lip service to it, but the thing is, the action doesn't follow. And that's what I've noticed. And I noticed that with all the organizations, okay? They give lip service to it, and they're fine as long as black men serve, okay? But they do not want to give up leadership position. But that's my opinion. It's not Dr. Thunder's opinion. That's my opinion. Okay. So no, what I'm saying, there's no reflection on him. Okay. If you want to, you know, come to BGS IBMOR or Black Pill Gnostic and have at it, right? You can castigate me all you want. That's my opinion. I'm not in the academy, so that I'm an outside observer looking in.
You know, my thought on it is, I'm sure that there are some that are malicious in that way. At one point, I think it's kind of like, I'm used to the way that things are. Why do I want it to change?
Exactly.
It seems like it's working out okay for me.
And for me, right?
Yeah. And that's kind of like
what they call it, but they used to call it benign neglect.
right. Or looking out for your own
self-interest,
invited self-interest, that kind of thing. So my challenge, my biggest challenge with that is, if you're not going to listen to what we're saying, to what men are saying, what black men are saying, if you're not going to look at what is happening and has happening, and has happened, how that is continuing to push us backwards. If you won't do it for us, if you won't do it for yourself, how about considering your son?
Ooh, okay. That's a can of worms.
This. So here's my thought on it. It's like, well, we know that a certain political party, when they talk about black families, they're not talking about men.
No.
They're talking about women and children. And I would extend that. It's not just women and children, it's women and daughters. Because the sons will grow up to be men.
What role are you training them for?
Yeah. It's
Are you training them to lead, or are you training them to serve?
Right, to serve.
And that's the question. So I'm not saying, I'm not, like I said, this is your platform, and I'm not going to put word, suggest anything that you don't agree with, or make or can't agree with. But it's not a matter of, go back to, say, like the pre-1960s, how white men saw their sons versus their daughters. Okay, doesn't mean they didn't love their daughters. They loved the heck out of their daughters. Right? They want to see their daughters succeed. But what role were they training their daughters for versus their sons? We got to remember, the black community kind of works backwards. Okay, so it's not that women don't love their sons. The thing is, what are they training their sons to do? Are they training their sons to lead the community or serve the community?
Point.
So, I mean, it's a distinction.
That's a good point. So, and we've kind of talked around this, but why is it that all of the governmental policies disproportionately affect our people? Now, there's an obvious answer there, and you sort of have already stated the answer. But let's look at one thing in particular: the poke.
Okay.
So with the poke, disproportionately, it's black people that have not gotten the poke.
Actually, it's really, if you depend, it's state by state, but it's pretty even. It's really not as full. It's pretty even. In fact, the vast majority
that I saw was that the black community was as high as 70% hadn't been vaccinated.
That's not what I saw. I saw more like 50-50. It's closer to that. Yeah. It's really the vast majority of people that are not vaccinated are white. And partially because there's more numbers, but yeah.
No, I get that. Since there's more of them than us, I'm talking about if you look at the percentages based on the number of us.
Yeah.
But my point is, now, and you're saying that you've seen some different numbers.
Yeah, same.
But if we take, but if we take the numbers I'm suggesting,
okay,
and then also look at all of the things that they're trying to put in place to make it harder for those people.
Okay.
It seems like another way to find something to make things harder for us.
And it looks that way,
Yeah.
but really not. But go ahead. Finish your point. I'm sorry.
Okay. No, that was my point. Now, if the numbers are different, then obviously my point, my argument falls apart.
Okay. Basically, and this is because I actually talked about this over a year ago. There's two parts to the poke, right? As we call it, right? There's two parts to it. There's a medical and there's a political. The medical is, yes, if everybody, the majority of people get the poke, you get closer to what they call herd immunity. Even people that get breakthroughs, it'll actually go down. It'll actually, lessen the amount of cases that's already been proven in the hospitals with cases of people that are having serious cases. 90% of the serious cases are unvaccinated people. Okay, that's the medical side. Okay, the political side is, okay, you need to certify people to get back into this economy. Actually put them back to work, put the kids back to school, to where it's safe, because you did. Whatever reason, whatever you believe in, they closed it down. Now they have to figure out how to open back up. And their way out to actually certifies people actually go back to their normal lives is the poke. Okay, so that's the political side. So they're going to ratchet it up, and they're going to make sure as many people get this poke as possible. Okay, and they're going to do whatever they need to do. And Biden just said he's tired of playing around. He said he's losing patience. It's not going to, they're not quite getting toward where it's mandatory, but it's going to be darn near mandatory, and it has nothing to do with color. In fact, the biggest opponents of the poke are not black. So, but the thing is, everybody's going to get the same treatment for political reasons. So it's really not a racist thing. They really don't care. This is one thing they don't care about. They don't care about whether you're white, black, Asian, or purple. It doesn't matter. Everybody, they want everybody, like as close to 100% as they can, to get the poke. So it's not. So it's not. This particular thing is not a race thing. There's reasons they want to do it. There's reasons that they want to have it, because they're not going to spend 10-15 trillion dollars a year just so with this economy being lackluster. Okay, they're not willing to go use the credit card for that anymore. So this is pretty much it. So if slowly but surely, I think Biden, basically anybody in the underneath his executive orders that's vulnerable, whether you're a contractor or you're certain federal workers, okay, you're gonna have to get this poke, okay, mandatory. And a whole lot of other people are going to have to get it mandatory. They take government money, take federal money. They're going to have to start making it mandatory. And even
it's mandatory at the university I'm at.
Yeah, it's mandatory.
Yeah,
certain people are going to be. It's going to be mandatory. And if you want your job or you want to live the lifestyle that you want to live, you're going to have to take the poke. So they're going to make it very uncomfortable for you not to have it.
Yeah. So we've talked about some issues in our community.
Right.
And I suggested that maybe some sort of forum where we can have some dialogue, open dialogue. Everyone comes to the table in good faith, all of that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think the remedy is for the problems that we have in our community? Now, obviously that's a huge question, but if you can maybe center around some of the things that we've discussed as being big issues, if you see there being some sort of remedy, some sort of fix for these issues.
Basically, how you organize people. Okay, if you understand how culture works, culture is not real. Okay, it's not real. It's actually created. It's created between the needs of your biological needs versus your environment, and how those two things interface is how your culture is going to go. Like the social culture, when the physical iPhone came out and actually put the internet in your hand, it changes the way you dated, changed the way you made it, changed the way you saw yourself. Basically, your culture shifted along with that one invention, right? That one, even though it's one invention, the whole structure of the internet, the physical culture, the physical environment actually changed the way your culture operated. And basically, that's the only remedy for ADOS, and that's a tough one, is the environment. Okay, and at some point, Black people going to have to say they actually really want to be together. That the Black community is important enough to save. If not, it's probably going to go down the tubes, because you have all these forces pulling it apart, especially the federal government, right? The government itself. There's a reason they call it integration, right? But slowly but surely, they're mixing you in with other groups of people, and slowly but surely your environment is going to change. Are you strong enough to actually withstand your environment and stay together? Because if you look at, because you teach, you're a professor, so you teach what we call Generation Z, okay? And the Generation Z is probably the first generation that is probably race neutral. They don't care who they date. They don't care whether it's Latina, white, Asian. They pick the best woman for them. And what has happened over the past 20 years, Black women have not been taught how to compete for their men. They never had to compete for their men. They just, okay, he's there, he's Black, I'm Black, I just go get me a Black man, because I don't really have to do anything special. He's going to accept me for my flaws, all my faults, my dysfunctions. He's going to accept it because he's Black, okay? Because there's no competition. Every other group for a Black man has to compete. You're still going to have to show the best face. You're going to have to adapt to him. They're going to have to aid him, help him, all that kind of stuff. Okay, that's the issue that I see. Okay, slowly but surely, the Z's and even the generation come up behind them, they can't figure out, okay, why should I be with a Black woman? There's no difference between us, because that's what they've been taught, and they've been mixed in. That's what they see. They go to school with other groups. They don't. It's not isolated like it used to be. So the environment's going to change. So the biggest thing I see is that Black women have not changed with the environment. They have not. They have not. At least they're not. Their relationship toward their men, it has not really changed, and it may be too ingrained for them to do it, for them to actually change or change fast enough. Because COVID should have been a wake-up call. COVID should have been the one where I need to sit down with my men, or sit down with my man, and see how we can work this thing out and actually build a better life together. That hasn't happened yet. Other groups it has, but as far as the Black women, they're starting to, but they're slow to the table. And can they keep up? Because they're behind. So that's what I'm saying. The only thing that's going to change is the environment, number one. And number two, the only real way to actually change it is Black women are going to have to change. And I think they're changing, but can they do it fast enough? I know it's a lot.
Tall order.
That's a lot.
It's a tall order.
What I'm saying is, you're a teacher. You see this. I'm not saying something that you haven't seen, because you're on campus.
No, yes, that's true. And one thing I thought was interesting was one of the Black students, one of the Black male students in the area that I teach in, he saw that I had interviewed, who was it? O'Shea Duke Jackson. Okay. And he shot me a text message. And he said, "Who are you going to interview next? AMS?" And what that told me was the men that in his age group and younger, the Black men, they are aware of a lot of these issues. They're facing these issues all the time. This stuff is not a figment, it's not made up. And the reason that he knows about those folks is because he's been checking those folks out because he's not been satisfied with his own dating situation,
right?
You know, his own whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So something else happened where one of the janitors in the building that I work in,
mm-hmm.
he stopped me and he said, hey, I saw you on O'Shea Duke Jackson's channel.
Mm-hmm.
You know. So it's interesting, and not just that, but I think there's a growing number of academics, Black academics, that are aware of what's going on. I think you can't hide this stuff for very long.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't pretend that this stuff is not a real problem.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can't just keep, behaving in a way as to think that, oh yeah, we're making progress and everything is going, peachy keen and everything else. And we're making, that's, you have to stop that at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And say, you know what? We say that we're trying to have a diverse body here. We're supposed to, more, Black students. Okay, that's great. But where are the Black men?
Mm-hmm.
Where are they as students? And where's the faculty? And where's, so what I'm hoping that happens, and this may be in vain, totally in vain, but what I'm hoping is that because folks have been willing to have some of these conversations on campuses in the last, since this whole pandemic, basically, since that has been the case, maybe that some of these other issues can sort of slide in there and be mentioned. And I have mentioned some of these issues, in particular the 20,000 fewer. I've been part of several committees to, hiring committees. And I know the way that the system is designed and the things that the boxes we need to check and to make sure that we're doing things, the right way and all of that, to consider diversity and inclusion and all of that. I know what that stuff is.
Right.
But I also know that they don't consider any of the stuff that we're talking about now. They don't consider the fact that there are fewer, Black men in the academy. They don't, and they can't be considering the abysmally low percentage of Black males that are going to college. Especially at certain institutions. So they can't be really seriously considering that, but then also celebrating as if they have made these huge achievements.
Right. Yeah, it's because they don't care. You can't convince me. You have all these smart people with all these degrees that are well read and well researched and tapped into everything that they know, and they're not doing anything. That means they don't care, or either they don't care or it's operating as they expect. Now, I'm beginning to believe it's operating as they expect because I don't see them. I see very few of them actually initiating stuff for Black boys. I know you're aware of the stats that 8th grade reading levels, right, which is pivotal. Only 10% of Black boys can read at 8th grade reading level nationally. So basically, if you don't start them, you don't get them in 8th grade and get them up to par, how are they going to make it to the academy? How are they going to make it to college? And if they do, because Dr. Johnson actually talks about this, right? He says 70% of Black males flunk out in the first year because they're not ready. They flunk out of the Cal State college system, which is the biggest college system in the country. 70% of Black males flunk out in the first year because they're not ready. And that should be ringing alarm. Any other group, would be alarm bells, right? All hands on deck. got to figure out this problem. We got to throw resources, time, and attention to actually fix this problem. But this has been going on the last 20, 30, maybe even 40 years, and nobody cares. I think maybe nobody cares because it's functioning the way it's supposed to. I'm just saying.
Well, this is not what I'm about to say is not disaggregated for race, but in high school and in the class valedictorians and presidents, class presidents, 93% female. That's countrywide. And of course, that's been that way for a long time. And there's no desire and incentive to try to change that. So why is that the case? Now we know that the philosophy in education changed to prioritize some of the fine motor skills that girls tend to develop quicker than boys, and sort of less focus on some of the macro, I suppose, skills that boys tend to develop faster. Boys tend to want to be hands-on. They tend to want to be able to do things and see something actually happen, as opposed to sit down and in writing, where girls are fine with sitting down for long periods of time and they're working on their handwriting and stuff like that. Now, I think part of it is that so many of the folks in education have totally bought into this idea that we're the same, and it's all nurture. It's like you were saying earlier.
Right.
And so, well, what's wrong? The boys should be able to do the same stuff. And say, well, that's kind of a strange thing for you to say now, since before you changed it, the numbers weren't the way that they are now. So why did you change it?
They knew what they were doing. They absolutely knew what they're doing, because I think it's called, I actually read this a while back. It's called The Boy Problem by, I think it's Julia Grant, right? And I'll actually send you the screenshot from it, right?
Sure.
We're back in, I think it was 1912, might have been 1912, might have been 1916. I can't remember which one it was. There was actually a series of articles in the Atlantic talking about the feminization of boys, white boys, in a school system because 90% of the teachers were white females. They're talking about because of the way the Prussian school system actually works, who's ever in front, that's the kind of ideal that actually gets adopted. And white boys were actually doing a lot worse than girls. This is back in 1916, right? And so what they had to do going forward, actually, is start adjusting the curriculum to actually fit boys better, which was that way until you got to 1972, and they changed it back. They absolutely do know what they're doing. It's not something that they have to guess at, because it's happened before. They, in fact, if you read this book called More Than Title IX, I can't remember the author's name, right? They actually outline, they actually went through all the programs, all the outlines of what kind of society, a feminist society that they actually wanted to build. So everything that you're talking about is in that book, about de-emphasizing the boys, emphasizing the girls, the gender neutral education that actually want to give boys and girls, which is not gender neutral. It's actually, the actual model student for America is actually a white female. But I'm not telling you anything new. But the thing is, the book actually outlines every program and every ideal and everything else back then. In fact, when they were trying to get Title IX in, get it past Congress, okay, they sold it as a the Congress thought it was a sports bill for women to actually participate in sports. And their thing, as long as you don't touch football and basketball, we're good with it. But college was never their target. Pros were never their target. Their target was K through 12. That was their target, and they actually admitted in the book. So it's not something that's not already printed. So they already know what works. They already know what kind of changes that they want to have. In fact, the only problem is that they believe in nurture so much they forget nature. And when they got that, I think the book is called, you probably have read it. It's there's two: The End of Men, and the second book is The Richer Sex. Well, Liz Mundy talks about equity, right? If there's a difference between equity and equality. In fact, I think I did a video on equity versus equality. Okay, equality is equal opportunity, right? Everybody gets the same opportunity, and you succeed or fail by merit, right? Burden of performance, right? Equity is equal outcomes. Everybody gets the same outcome, regardless of what you put in, what you put out, what your talent is. Equity is everybody gets the trophy. Everybody gets a cookie. Everybody gets a pat on the head. That's equity. And what feminists want is equity. They don't want equality. They want equity, which really what they want is power. And in I think in 2012, which they call the Year of the Woman, they reached what they call equity because of the downturn in the economy because of the banking and housing crisis, right? A lot of men lost their jobs. So what they had back then, they had 33% of households were led by females, 33% were basically equal, and 33% was actually led by males, and that to them was equity. What they noticed is that the women, especially high earning women, did not want to be breadwinners, and that was a problem. So basically, they have a feminist revolt by women not wanting to be breadwinners. They don't want to be breadwinners. They want their husbands to be breadwinners, and that's the issue. And that's what the Richer Sex was about: trying to brainwash women into being breadwinners, to go against their biology. And that's the issue that they're still having, because we still talk about it. Feminists, I don't care whether it's a feminist or whether she's educated, not educated. I'll talk about the same things. And especially black women. What do they always say? They want a black man on their level. They don't want a black man that's beneath them. They don't want a black man that earns less than them. They want a black man on the level. The thing is, where do they come from? They don't come out of nowhere. It starts in kindergarten with the reading and math scores. Okay, if you have only 10% of your black boys can read a reading level, what kind of men you're going to get on the other side? You're not going to get educated, prosperous men on the other side. It's almost impossible. You know, what the old saying, garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I know I'm throwing a lot at you.
Oh, no. I mean, I hear what you're saying. I mean, all of that stuff follows. You know, my main, it's interesting because these days, if you just advocate for men, that's seen as being some sort of onslaught or attack against women. You know, so if I just say, hey, these are issues that I'm concerned about with black boys, or these are issues that I'm concerned about in the academy, or these are issues that, you know, when you say those things, then it like turns into it's some sort of problem. And you're a misogynist, or you're pick your whatever you want to say. I want to ask you about so you kind of got deplatformed in the past. You were deplatformed and got doxxed, and some folks were even coming after your family and stuff. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Basically, I have been getting doxxed since I had like maybe less than 500 subscribers. So black male feminists have been coming after me since I had less than 500 subscribers. So me having a big platform had nothing to do with it. So, and as I've gained more subscribers, it's just increased. And I don't, you know, if they want to take a channel, that's fine. I've never been deplatformed, so they've never taken a channel, which surprises me. Okay, have I gotten strikes? Yeah. Have they said I couldn't broadcast for a while or certain things? Yeah, I have. It recently happened. Believe it or not, I got a community strike for basically re-uploading Green Gorilla's explanation about the welfare system. which had nothing to do with bullying people or saying anything negative against black women or anything like that. But I got a strike for that. But that happens, right? But they've never taken a channel. But I actually locked my channel because what I say can be controversial. Sometimes some people think it's dangerous. And I don't mind if you dox me, it's no big deal, because I've been doxed, and basically people that know who I am and know my identity, they find out I am the person that I say I am on air. And basically, since I have a lot of people that work in what I call the Hotep, the conscious community, okay, that is a very matriarchal system, right? And sometimes what I say can, actually rubs women the wrong way, and they can actually retaliate against people that I know. So that's the only reason that I don't show my face. I don't use my real name. Okay. Other than that, if you find out who I am, basically I've been saying this stuff for 20 years. So nothing has changed. So you're trying to dox me. You dox me, what do you find? You dox my family, what do you find? You find out that there's no big deal. I'm a regular dude. I don't have this fancy degree. I'm not like you. I don't have an academic reputation I have to defend. I'm not going to get pulled up into the chancellor's office for certain comments. So I don't have to worry about that. So they've kind of slowed down because the doxing, actually doxing of my grandchild and my daughter, I said, okay, I don't really want that to affect them. I don't really want these trolls coming after my daughter and my grandchild because of what I'm saying. So I said, my thing is, okay, if you leave them alone, guess what I'll do? I'll actually close the channel and I'll go away. But guess what didn't happen? They kept doing it. I said, okay, if you're going to keep doing this stuff anyway, why should I leave? I said, but if you make me come back, guess what? I'm actually going to ratchet it up a level. Okay. I said, if I have to come back, you're not going to like it. And that's what the little lightsaber was that I actually have. Okay. Bring the lightsaber when I come back. So, and basically for the last 2 years, I kind of brought the lightsaber, and so they've kind of backed off. So doxing me now means you're just going to get more of it. And basically, I'm what a green gorilla calls an autodidact. I'm a self-study. Basically, some people read this stuff for their job, because they're a teacher, because they work. I read this stuff because it's a hobby. Like I think the last couple of books I just listened to was talked about the autobiography, not autobiography, but the biography of Otto von Bismarck, and how he was actually central, actually pulling Germany together as a country, right? And how that affected the wars against France and the wars against Austria and the wars in Europe, how that affected. And the one I'm just finishing up is called the 100-Year Marathon, how China is actually waged a 100-year, not war, but 100-year economic war to actually overtake the United States. So those are just the last two that I've read over the last, let's say, 3 weeks. So I do this stuff as a hobby. And what I put actually online is like maybe 10, maybe 50% of what I really know. Okay. So the thing is, if they really make me mad, then I'm just going to open up the whole, I can actually open up the whole, what is it? The whole trunk of whoop ass.
Right.
Don't, how I said it, don't make me open this. Yeah. Well, you can see, there's stuff that I talk about. There's stuff that I can actually read that are theories that are actually run by people that are experts, like you, like Dr. Johnson, like Green Gorilla, Dr. Curry, just on this side, like even for COVID, right? It's not just me, okay? I have a sub, she's a genetic engineer. I got the sub, he's actually works for Squibb as a drug developer. That's his job. And I got one that regulates drugs in pharmaceuticals and stuff like that. So I got three, and I got three other nurses that work in the ICU. So it's COVID. If I have a question, I just email one of them, right? And said, okay, you're on the ground. What are you seeing? Like the latest surge in COVID, right, is one of my subs, Rodney. Shout out to Rodney. He works in Arkansas in the ICU dealing with COVID cases. He said the anti-mask thing that's going on in the South is going to cause a surge. He said that like 4 months ago, and basically 2 months later, the surge shows up. So basically, I rely on people to validate, what I'm thinking. Now, I may have an idea, but the thing is, I always go to experts. I always read, go to experts, always backed up by something. So even this, we talking to me, how many books did I just reference, where I got my stuff from? I just pull stuff out of my behind. I'm not just a guy on YouTube just saying what I think. Basically, it is well researched.
Yeah, well, we appreciate your attention to detail in that research. Thank you very much for being willing to put yourself out there also, just to say the stuff that you say. Yeah. So, is there anything that you'd like to plug?
Just my channels. I wish that if the book was close to being finished, I would plug the book, but the Octane book is not even close to being finished. And it's mostly the people I call the 92s, the corporate people or the learned people actually want the book. I said that I don't think I need to write one, but they said they need a physical book, a physical manual. And all the Octane series is about the different social classes that Black people have from bottom to top, and how the personalities, it's actually written for men. Well, women have certain personalities in different classes, and depending on what your needs are, there different attributes in different classes. Like, say, if you need to be pushed, or you need you're going into business, you need to advance in your career, then what you need is a corporate, or what I call a 92, because she's corporate, she's pushed. 92s are basically partners. They're not really 92, what I call corporate or 92s don't make good wives, because they're professional people, and they're worried more about their careers than their family. The family comes second. So that's how come they're making better partners than they do wives. And then, but that's the book, that's the book about social classes with men and women, how they interact as far as mating and dating. And a lot of what Kevin does, he actually uses a lot of this stuff. But the book is, I'm like, I'm just like halfway through writing the book, and then I got to edit it. So I would push it. People are looking for it, but it's not ready yet. Other than that, just the channels.
All right. Well, later tonight, because when this airs, it's going to be Thursday. So later tonight, I'm doing a show, Thunder's Thoughts, with Dr. Doug. And the name of the show is Are Modern Women Willing to Build with a Man?
No.
Well, that's the thing. We're going to do a review a Kevin Samuels video, and also a Jennifer Molesky video. And so that's what's going to be happening. That's going to be 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If folks want to check that out, come back and see it. Thank you very much, BGS, very much for doing this interview. As I said, I'd been looking forward to it for some time, and I'm glad we got it in. And I will be talking to you. I'm going to have you on again, because we just got going, and then it's like, oh, snap.
We call that BGS drift. It starts at one place and it ends someplace way across the water. So I call that drift.
Yeah. That's all right, because that's, the thing is with a conversation goes wherever it goes. You don't need to control where it goes. It flows like water flows. It just flows down whatever the terrain is. And I enjoy that. I mean, I try to have a few questions in mind, in a few directions I want to start, but other than that, I just like it to go wherever it goes. So that was very welcomed.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know that it's a lot. People listening, I know it's a lot. If you never heard me before, it sounds it's like a water hose, like a fire hose, throwing a lot at you, and that's just scratching the surface. I can't get into the finer details of it. We because it's like 7 years worth of information. So it's kind of hard to like compress it all into one. So what I actually do, or what I actually present, is pretty wide ranging, from geopolitics to economics to Black history to and sometimes even Black relationships. So I'm kind of all over the place. So it's kind of hard to kind of compress it into like one interview.
All right, man. Well, I definitely will be talking to you soon.
Okay.
And if you'd like me to come and return the favor, just let me know.
Anytime.
All right. Well, God bless you and your family, and you be well, and we'll see you next time.